Hello and welcome to the Gothic Unicorn. Today I'm going to be making something for my 1/12 scale house. Now I'm going to start off with a little bit of talking, so if you want to skip ahead, feel free. I've mentioned in some recent videos how I've been having problems with the 1/12 scale build, and I couldn't put my finger on what the problem was. The previous rooms that I'd done in the doll's house, I had had so much inspiration for. There were so many things I wanted to include, far more than I was able to actually fit in physically. And the ideas kept coming, and I had an idea for my dining room. I knew the sort of theme that I wanted, but it just wasn't coming together. And it's occurred to me why. I thought I would go through my collection of miniatures and see what I could find that I could fit into the dining room. And I realised that in its previous existence, the dining room was rather underdressed. There was a cabinet that was filled with china, but that was about it. There wasn't lots and lots of added extras. There wasn't lots of life. The room was actually fairly dull. And I think that's what I'm battling against, was I just hadn't got a clear image of how I wanted it dressed. Now I've got ideas. I did the dining room. I started work on the dining room because I wanted a room that I could dress for occasions, for Halloween, for Christmas. And of the rooms I'm going to do, the dining room seemed the most time effective. But it has left me with an issue regarding ordinary decor, and that's one that I've got to try and address. I did find a few things, but not many, and it was disheartening, if I'm going to be truthful. I've got a big box full of small things. I could lay the table many times over, but a table full of food looks odd without people. It looks odd without context. So I think what I need to do is I need to decide on a everyday look and make an everyday setting. That said, I did remember, they weren't actually in the box with the minis, one thing that I'd got, and one thing I'd got that I'd bought from a non-mini supplier, strangely enough, were some decanters. Now this is a glass bottle that wine or spirits would be put into when things needed to be aerated, or they needed to be sieved, or just because a labelled bottle looks ugly at the table. Now I bought these ages ago and I thought, oh, I could include some of them. But then I got to thinking, well, actually I could make my own, and that's what I'm going to do today. So let's get on with that bit. So, decanters. I'm aiming to make a pair of decanters and a stand for them to live in. Now quite often in the past, decanters, because they held expensive drinks, would have a wooden cage even that went around them and stopped anybody from helping themselves. Obviously, back in the past, they thought that servants and other members of the household were a bit like teenagers are supposed to be, raiding the adults' adult drinks. So I want to try and make something like that. Now, my instant thought was, how on earth am I going to make a decanter? They're made of glass, like my example that I showed a little earlier, or crystal, and they're normally quite decorative. And I can't do that. So I got to thinking, and the next thing that came to mind was eye drops. Now I've got any number of these because my husband has to use them. These are single-use eye drops. These ones have what is basically a sterile, almost a sterile water. And yeah, I got a lot. I've used them for various things. I've used them for bottles. I even made a hourglass. But I wasn't sure that this was quite the right shape. And I do happen to have some others. Now these ones are a more elongated shape. Again, it's my husband. He's got a problem that means that every now and again he ends up with eye medication. And I kept a couple of these and I've swirled them out. Not easy, must admit, trying to get to swirl these out. But to be fair, these ones were really good for all the medication coming out in the first place anyway. But I have actually swirled them out with a little bit of alcohol, rubbing alcohol. Isopropyl alcohol. Yeah, just to be on the safe side. So this is going to be what I'm going to use. I'm going to use these. So they are more elongated, less scientific flask shaped. Now I like that I could turn those into a scientific flask by cutting them off there, but that's not what I want for my decanters. And whilst the bit of texture could have passed for some kind of detail, I wanted something a bit different, so I'm going with these. And the first job is to trim these off. Obviously you've got to trim off the label section here. It does actually break apart very easily, and then there is an excess of plastic around the edge. Now you do need to be very careful when you're doing this. I did it with a craft knife very slowly, and I still managed to put a hole in the bottom of one of the pieces. I'll get to that in a minute. Now this is what I've come up with. This is the main body of the eye drop. I have trimmed the neck, for want of a better word, down, and I've trimmed off most all of the seams around the outside. It took a while, as I say. Needs a craft knife, needs you to be very careful. And that is the basis of my decanters. Now, I need two. My second one is drying, because I put some glue on the bottom, and that is setting off nicely. It's curing. Literally, all that happened is I went a little bit far and I got a little tiny split on that seam. You can do it without glue and it'll be set a lot quicker. I've just done it with some of my ordinary glue, and then I've left it to dry. Did it like that. Now I've left them to dry because I want to fill them with some UV resin. You've seen recently I did I opened one of the Harry Potter potions kits and I adapted it. And I think I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to do them, and I'm going to do them to some interesting colours. I'm going to put some liqueurs in them, and then to make them look more like a decanter, I've got some beads that I'm going to use on the top just to finish it off. Actually, I've got them here. They are little crystal bicones, I think they're called, and these are going to fit nicely onto there and look like a fancy crystal decanter topper, I hope. I need to add a little bit of either glue or resin to fill in the holes because it's a bead, but yeah, so I'm going to go off and I'm going to play with a little bit of resin. I'm going to be using UV resin and some colours, which are actually resin colours. I'm not using acrylic paint with it, because if I use the actual resin colours, it will give me something that is clear. It will be transparent, semi-transparent, depending which colour I use and how much I put in. So I'm going to go and play with some resin. I completed my decanters. I filled them with coloured resin. I went for a purple and this sort of fuchsia pink colour because I didn't want them to look like anything conventional. And I've topped them off with the little crystal bicone beads. Now the next stage is to build a box for them, and I could use my favourite cereal box, but I think I'm going to use some pieces that I've got of coffee stir sticks. I think they will make a reasonable sized container holder, and I don't want it to be too big. So I'm going to have a look at this. I've got some more bits, figure out what size I wanted, how many pieces I need, and then start putting something together. The basis of my older tray, whatever you want to call it, is now together. And what I did is I cut 4 strips from my coffee stir stick. I cut them all the same length to begin with, which was 2 for the back, 1 for the front and 1 for underneath. Now the underneath one I've actually reduced in size by the width of 2 more pieces, which I cut from the ends, so I got this nice finish curve on the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going to paint it. Now I've stuck this together, 2 at the back and obviously the one for the bottom with the 2 sides on, and then I've used a little piece of matchstick to make the sort of carrying handle, as if you want to see it as such. Now I'm going to paint it. I'm going to paint it black, and then I'm going to go for a metallic. Not sure what metallic yet, and I will put my my decanters in and stick them in place before I put the front on, because it's going to be very snug. That's the look that I'm going for. I'm not going to want to remove the decanters, but yeah. Now you could, if you wanted to make it look like one of the old-fashioned ones that locked, put another piece across to hold them in place and make some kind of a lock. I don't need that bit, so I'm not going to bother. So it's on with the black paint for a base coat, and I'm going to paint all of this and this piece, and then I'm going to do it in a metallic finish when I decide which metallic to go for. So next time you see it, I'll be putting it all together. I have just filmed sticking all this together, and realised as I came to stop the camera that it hadn't started filming when I pressed go. Obviously it was a one take event, so I haven't got the footage that I wanted, which is really annoying. Instead, I will just explain. I glued the decanters with a little bit of glue on the bottom and on the back at the bottom so that they won't move. They're nice and secure in the stand. And then I stuck some glue across the bottom and on the sides of this front piece and stuck it together. And I made myself my little decanter stand, this decanter case, I don't know what you'd call it, but I've got my 2 bottles of something interesting. Probably slightly spooky. I didn't go for particularly spooky colours. I didn't go for anything that was too red. I've got red. Instead I went for these just because I thought they would show up a little bit within the room. And I'm quite happy with how they turned out. It was a odd little make. And it's going to work nicely in my odd little dining room. If you've enjoyed this video, even though it wasn't quite what I wanted it to be, please like, comment and subscribe. It all helps my channel. And consider ringing that notification bell, because then YouTube should let you know when I put up a new video. And until next time, bye!